Our lives are a string of insights, flashes of inspiration that can be the catalyst for new ideas. However, our pace of life these days means we tend to miss some of them completely. I'm Dave Hill, and I'm the host of the Simple Reflections podcast, a fortnightly series of interviews with people from all walks of life. Our conversations are an invitation to reflect on some of the simple insights my guests have had that have gone on to have a profound impact on their lives. So grab a cuppa and a biscuit, join us, slow down for a little while and see what shows up for you. Welcome to the next episode of the Simple Reflections podcast. Today I'm joined by Christine Heath. Christine is the Executive Clinical Director of the Hawaii Counselling and Education Centre, obviously in Hawaii, a bit sunnier than here in Scotland. And she's been connected with the Three Principles community now for almost 46 years, which is amazing. And I've been...
I was 12 when I started.
Yeah, well, yeah, I was surprised yeah, it was a bit of a shock to me as well, Christine. Um, um, I've been angling in my mind at having a conversation with Christine probably since I started this podcast 3 years ago and only plucked up the courage this year. So thank you so much for coming to join me. Um, Christine is the co-host of a podcast called Psychology Has It Backwards with Judy Sedgman, who you'll remember that I interviewed a few years ago. And scarily, they've been running that for nearly 6 years with 212 episodes, which is some going. And amazing what you can do when you're having fun with your friends. And Christine's also the co-author of a book called The Secret of Love with Laurie Carpinos. Is that correct?
Harpinos, huh?
Yeah, cool. Got that right. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, well, thank you for asking me. It's very kind of you.
No, you're
I,
very, very welcome.
I'm thrilled to be here, and thanks. I'm over in Hawaii, so I'm kind of away from everybody, And so when I get asked to do these things, I'm so grateful because I'm like, oh yeah, I'm still here.
Yeah. Yeah. Sitting on the side of a volcano in the middle of the ocean.
On the side of the volcano with the earthquakes and the lava, and yeah, it's a very alive place to live. And
Yeah, I'm sure it
Earth is
is.
alive here, yeah.
Mhm. Um, Christina, I would love to know what is exciting you at the moment. What gets you up and out of bed and feel alive and excited to do the work that you do after all these years of exploring and playing around.
I think what we do at my center is that we have a couple of programs that I'm very um, involved with in terms of both a clinician and developing the program.
Hmm.
And one is for men who are violent, and the other one is for alcohol and drug users, substance abusers. And it's the first time I've done treatment with substance abusers for about, I don't know. I mean, in a structured program
Hmm.
for, I don't know, 20, 30 years maybe. And it's interesting for me to come back to it now as uh, having not done it for a while and to see how I want to do it differently. And so each week we're coming up with new things to do and changes in the way that we do the program. And so we're noticing different things like, okay, we noticed this, I said, I just see that after it takes about 2 months. And after 2 months, people start to quiet down enough to start listening, and we start to get more understanding of the principles then. And so kind of just being open to that and seeing how people are changing and what we're doing. And I used to do things very differently in terms of how we ran the groups and what we do. And now we basically give people homework and then we talk about what people saw in the homework
Mm.
as part of the group. So it's not a group where you have to come and bare your soul and go through all the problems of the week and do that kind of thing. It's really amazing to me how some of these people that we work with are so lost and how they really find themselves and change in a relatively short amount of time. I mean, I had this man that I mean, to me, I never get sick of working with people. That's kind of where my
Mm.
passion is. And I don't care what people's problems are. You know, the worse the problem, the better, as far as I'm concerned, because it you watch a person change really dramatically from being so lost to it being so simple to find themselves. You know, it's kind of like when somebody goes, "Oh yeah, your sunglasses are on your head," and you,
Mm.
how embarrassing is that? But this particular man grew up in Samoa, and when he was 5 years old, his parents left him, and they left him with an auntie who was physically abusive to him, and it was not a good place for him. So somehow he got to the US and he started using meth and alcohol and any other drug that there was. And I had two sessions with him, really, an intake session and the first group session. And he came to the second group and said, "Oh, I had dinner with my father, who he hadn't spoken to in all these years. And he is now meeting his brothers and he's connecting with his mother finally. And all of these people that he's been so estranged from. And we never once talked about doing that. Not, we weren't I didn't even really know how estranged he was from people. But you see the power within people to clean their life up, to create a beautiful life just by pointing them in the direction of a feeling, not by understanding the three principles or, you know, things like that, but kind of waking up to that feeling inside of them that provides them with whatever guidance they need to do what they need that's right for them to get better. And it's just so powerful to see. I mean, I think this guy maybe has I don't think he has a high school education. I think he's dropped out of school and he's very young, if he went to school much at all. And and yet he's like his face just totally changed in two sessions. It was like the first session was dark and he was kind of like this, and then all of a sudden he's like this. And it was like, wow. And you know when that happens that the person has really touched a part of them that's so pure and so beautiful. And they
Mm.
found it for themselves. And that to me is somebody asked me if I was going to retire because I am actually over 50. And I said, well, gosh, you know, why would I want to do that? I mean, how lucky am I to get to sit with human beings and do nothing, point them in a direction, and then watch them transform their lives?
Mm.
It's such a gift to me. So I probably, as long as I can still remember what I'm saying or remember who I'm talking to, I'll probably continue to do this because to me, that's where my passion is. It's just there's just nothing better in my life anyway than to watch a human being evolve before your eyes.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's been my passion for 40 years and actually longer than that. Before I met the principals, I saw in people that they could change. I worked exclusively with women who were sexually and physically abused as children in the 70s, which nobody was doing that at the time. And I could see that no matter what they'd gone through, they could still find their health. Although I did think that, they would still lurk in the back of their minds a little bit. It would still bother them a little bit. But I could see there was hope there that they weren't destined to suffer for the rest of their lives. And I think that I was kind of onto that. It's why I was so drawn to this work because I really, really knew that people could be healthy even though I wouldn't have called it that in those days. I would have said that people could get better, they could overcome their circumstances. And it's funny to have a passion really for that long and still feel as, I mean, I tell my interns this all the time because I do graduate students, right? And I train them. And I said, you find another supervisor that's as old as I am, that's been doing this work as long as I have, that still is jazzed about what they're doing as they were when they started.
I think
Yeah.
it's, it's a really healthy sign of someone's in it for all the right reasons. I don't mean it, yeah. Do I mean that? Yeah, I do mean it that way. But in terms of seeing the power of what's possible, I was watching a program the other day, on bizarrely on the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland in Geneva, and a couple of the directors there that have retired have still got offices there, and one of them is still going in every day, over 100 years old,
Yeah,
and actively involved in the place and seeing how it works, and okay, not giving the same output that he used to in his youth, but still, this is my passion. This is why I'm on the planet, and
that's
loving exactly what they're doing. Uh,
that's right.
that's the thing that's exciting for me, is realizing that that's there for everybody, and they can find that, on their own. But actually, having a guide can be a really helpful thing from time to time.
Right. And it's interesting because life will come to you, with whatever you need to see something deeper. So it's kind of nice just to be like, I feel like when they have the police out and they're directing traffic and they're standing, they go that way. You have to go that way. Everybody go that way. And that's kind of how I feel like it's like, oh, just go that way. It's okay. No, 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 don't go here. Come on back over here. And so I always think that, people get caught up in their thinking all the time. And so they come in and they're telling me about all the thinking that they're doing. And all I'm doing is like doing this, like, no, no, look over here. And it's like, no, but you don't understand. No, look over here. And then someday, for no apparent reason, I go, look over here. And they're like, oh, over there. Why didn't you tell me that before? And it cracks me up, because it's so simple, but we make it we made life so complicated.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah. So we've created a way of helping people in psychology that's quite um, complicated because it's backwards. That's why we do that. My podcast, Psychology is Backwards, because we're trying to fix things after we create them, rather than just seeing that they will disappear if you move into a healthier state. And watching that fall away for people is truly a gift.
yeah, yeah. It's a wonder to see. It really is. Um, I'd like to take you back to when you first came across the principles. What was the story there? How did that happen?
Well, I was really thinking I needed to get married in order to be happy. And so I was kind of taking an inventory of my life, and I thought, okay, so going to clubs and meeting men. I don't know why this was, but I kept meeting men that were alcoholics at bars. And I thought, well, this is not working. So I thought psychology conferences. I'll start going to psychology conferences. And Joe Bailey, who was in the same building, that there's this big therapist building in Minneapolis, and he had an office and right next to mine, kind of. We didn't really like each other, but he was bringing up this psychologist with this new stuff that he was starting to get interested in. And we happened to meet for lunch. I mean, we really didn't like each other, but we met, something happened, and he said, hey, I'm going to lunch. You want to go? And I said, yeah. So I went down there and he told me about going down to this conference in Florida where he met this woman. And so he said this guy named Sydney Banks was talking there, but I met this woman. And so he launches off into this woman who's coming up to live with them, and it's the love of his life. And he's so in love with her. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go to that conference, thinking, maybe the same thing would happen to me. And then I had my roommate, I had referred to another therapist for couples counseling, and she had referred him to Joe for his own personal counseling. And then my best friend that I did group with, her husband was also in the same group that Joe did with my roommate. And I was very irritated because my roommate kept getting better, but he wasn't dealing with stuff the way that I thought he should be. So I marched down into Joe's office and I said, Joe, what is this stuff you're doing? And so he starts to explain it to me. I said, that sounds like rational emotive therapy. That sounds like AA. That sounds like da da da. And he got frustrated with me. He goes, well, look, we're doing the training next weekend. If you want to go, sign up for it. I don't want to explain it to you. You're not listening. And I was like, okay. Then I went up to my office and I thought, well, that'd be a better way to meet men than bars. So let's sign up. And then there was the second day was optional, but I thought if I met a man the first day and I wasn't signed up for the second day, it'd be too obvious. So I signed up for both days just in case, right? So I went late. I was in a very low mood. I was the person in the audience that was the one you hate to have asking all the argumentative questions and not listening. And Dr. Mills was there and he was very good. He kept answering me and it went over my head. But I thought everybody else in the room understood him because they were doctors and psychologists and smarter than me in my mind. So we broke for lunch. And at lunch, it was really weird because all the people from my clinic were sitting together, bad mouthing Roger and saying this wasn't anything new and what we do is good too, and blah, blah, blah. So we got up from the table. I never forget, it was just kind of a weird thing that happened. I started walking away from the table and it was like time stopped. You know, like when you're watching a TV show and the main character keeps walking and everybody else is stopped in time. Well, that happened. Everybody was stopped. And I was like, oh, weird. And I turned around and I walked out the door. And as I walked out the door, Dr. Mills had gotten up and met me at the door. Now, at the time, now I know that he's trying to calm me down so I'm not so disruptive, right? But he started talking to me on the way back to the room. And the feeling he was talking from felt like my soul was being stroked like velvet. You know, like there's just this beautiful feeling. And I'd never felt that before. But now in my mind, I'm thinking it's about him, right? So I'm thinking, oh, yeah, dinner is definitely an option here. So I went back in the afternoon because now I knew he was single. And I thought to myself, I better listen if I'm going to go to dinner with him so we can have a conversation. And I started listening, and the most I could hear was this. He was talking about positivity. And in therapy at that time, being positive was considered doing bad therapy. And so I'm listening and go, positive. I could do positive. I could do that. And then there was another break. And I went up to this physician. And at the time, I thought, doctors, if you could get through medical school, man, you were my hero. And so I was talking to him and I said, well, what do you think about this? He said, well, I think it makes good common sense. I thought, well, if a doctor thinks this is not weird, maybe I should listen. So I went back in the afternoon and Roger put up this chart and all of a sudden I went, doink, and it was like all my misperceptions of my life passed in front of my eyes. All the moments in time I had taken personally and then developed a lot of insecurity about, just literally, like people say your life flashes before your eyes when you're dying. But it was kind of like I psychologically kind of died for a minute and I just saw that I had been thinking in a way that was very backwards and dysfunctional for me. And I started to laugh. I thought it was hilarious because the next thought that came in my head was like, oh man, I spent $25,000 in 7 years in therapy trying to analyze what I made up. And I realized that I was seeing my thoughts, that all in my life I had misinterpreted things because of my thinking, got on my eyeballs. And then when I looked at my life and interpreted things, it was all distorted based on faulty thinking that I had about myself. I thought it was hilarious. I must have laughed for 3 days. Now, I was super serious before this. I was very serious. I hardly ever smiled. Life was very serious business. You know, the kind of work I did was super serious. And I started laughing so much and smiling that my cheeks hurt. I have to go like this for about 3 days. So after that, I went to pick up Roger Mills, and we were sitting in the lobby of the hotel that he was staying in, and he was talking to me about where he went to college and how he got to this work and telling me his story, right? And I was listening to him, and all of a sudden, I had a deep shift in consciousness, and I thought, oh, holy shit, I'm being changed right now. This is going to be my work for the rest of my life, and I have no control over what's happening right now. And it was the most beautiful and yet powerful experience I've ever had. And that feeling, it was very powerful, very beautiful. And again, I started laughing again. I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Because I knew it wasn't doing anything. It was just coming to me from within. And then we had dinner that night. And I remember saying to Roger, Joe and Michael and Roger and I had dinner. And I remember, first of all, I was the last person that anybody thought would hear anything. And then I said to him, all of a sudden, I realized, like, I don't need to be in therapy. There's nothing wrong with me. And he goes like, well, I don't know about that. You know, he's like, I don't think he's seen anybody change that much either. And I said, no, I'm fine. I don't need anything. And from that point on, I just kept studying. And then I went down to Miami where he was with Dr. Enrique Suarez. And I did a year-long internship where I'd fly back and forth from Minnesota. And then I met Sydney Banks and when I went down there a month later, he was on vacation there and he did a talk that I got invited to, and he saw something in me and said, I'd like to help you. Would you like my help? And I was like, yes. And he said, well, just be you. I'll never forget this. He said, just be you, just be ordinary. And I was like, okay, whatever that is. But you know, it's like I could feel it. And that was the beginning of my journey. Then I was a student of Sydney Banks's for the rest of my life. And mid
Amazing.
50s, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, very lucky. And I don't know why, but it felt to me like, okay, this chick's got to do something. And so we need to get her out of that level of consciousness she's at really fast. And I just shifted up in a way that was, I mean, people thought I flipped out. The word went out in the community. I was a big name in the domestic violence community. And people said Christine Heath flipped out. And I said, I don't know if this is flipping out, you ought to try it because I feel better than I felt in my whole life. So it's, I had people call me and say, I heard that you were crazy and you flipped out. It's like, well, it's interesting when people change because the thing I realized is that, especially in our field, you didn't see people change that much that quickly. Actually, probably that much at all, but that in that short of a time, going to a weekend thing and then coming back and being a different person. And like I had 65 clients a week, and I had 8 groups or something, and all women who were childhood victims of sexual trauma. And I walked in and I said, well, you guys, I don't really know what I'm doing here. I went to a weekend day and a half training, and I'm going to totally change the way I do therapy. And this is what I'm going to do. And all but I think 2 people stayed with me. And one of the things that kept them there is that they saw how much I had changed.
Hmm.
They said, whatever you're drinking, that's what I want. And so watching those clients change. Now, I didn't do all their case notes because it's too lazy. And so I had them do their own case notes, and then I would make notes on them. And I wish I'd kept them because you could see that their case notes were talking about hopelessness, fighting with their mother, fighting with their family, bad relationships. And then I went to the weekend, and the next Monday, their notes started to reflect hope and change and feeling better. It was amazing. It was the most powerful thing that ever had. Well, so having that many clients, and that Minneapolis is a relatively small town, it kind of went out into the world. And so Joe and I were like partners in crime, breaking the rules in ways that neither of us were actually comfortable with. We've both been pretty interested in having people think highly of us. And so we kind of, for about a year and a half, we just were learning for ourselves, and we talked to each other every night. And then this happened, and then that happened. And because we just were witnessing miracles that were happening that we'd never seen with the clients that we had. And then our our partners in the same clinic, they went to the same training, didn't hear the same thing. Nothing changed for them, and they couldn't understand it. And so, like, I had this room off the waiting area, and we'd have these groups, and we'd have peals of laughter that would come out. And so their clients would go to them and say, "What kind of therapy is she doing? I want to do that kind of therapy." And so they got very insecure. So
Mhm.
we decided that we should set up our own clinic then. And so we set up the Minneapolis Institute for Mental Health. And it really was the very first mental health clinic in the world. Roger and Rick had a center, but it was just kind of a private practice with the two of them. But we had a license for it, and it was a full on clinic. And at first we attracted people in the addiction field because we both worked with people with alcohol and drug problems as well. And so the staff or the counselors from that came. I kept looking for the psychologist because Sid said this will go out in psychology. And I kept looking for him. I was so disappointed. Like, where are they? Where are they? And then, but all these other counselors were coming in, and I couldn't even see them. So we hired people as they started to wake up, and we built this whole clinic. And yeah, that was the beginning of it. It was the most amazing um, ride you could take. It was very powerful, and there's so many stories from them. But so that, and then I decided I was learning how to be a nice person. I could move someplace that was warm and nice, so I moved to Hawaii in 1985. So 2 years later, I moved to Hawaii and set up the Hawaii Counseling and Education Center. And I moved back to Minnesota in the 2000s when my husband got promoted. And then I moved back to Hawaii. And so I've been kind of back and forth.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I love hearing people's stories about, how how things have transpired for them that they they were either looking for something and something else showed up, or they weren't looking for anything and something showed up. And it's always a surprise, but a pleasant one.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that's that comes back to that business of hope. There's nothing out of the ordinary here in terms of what's possible for human beings. And
Mhm.
it's possible for all human beings.
Mhm.
Um, it just tends to be we stumble and fall into a sort of dark mess of our own thinking and attributing that to something else because that looks like the safest thing to do.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think the thing I love most about what you were saying was the way you showed up in the world after that weekend and your clients shifting from that moment as well because they saw what was possible. And I think,
And they felt it. They could feel
yeah,
it.
yeah. And I think, that's the beauty of what this is all about. Whether it comes with an understanding of the principles or not, if we show up with care and compassion and a desire to be of service to someone and truly listen to them, that, that changes things for people,
Mhm.
um, without there needing to be any explanation for it. The number of people that are surprised at the things that they share in conversation with someone who's just listening to them. Nothing more than that. No words being shared necessarily. Like, I have never told anybody that ever, and I feel weirdly better for it. Awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of like how to create that safe space for people is about the space inside.
Mm,
People kind of make it about how you're talking to people or what you're saying or what the room looks like or things like that. But it's really when you're living in that space, other people recognize it in
mm.
themselves
Yeah,
and they feel safe there.
yeah, yeah. They sort of get. I don't know whether they nearly used a military term there. I sort of they almost sort of fall into step.
Yeah,
Um,
you can use military terms. I work with a lot of
I
vets.
know I don't try and not do it, but it's just amusing. Oh, here we go with another one. But it feels right because there's a rhythm. There's a sort of rhythm to it
That's right.
that
That's right.
that
And that
feels
there's
familiar.
and when I mean, even in the military, the reason they do that is so that everybody is connected.
Mm,
So, and that feeling of connection is how we move together with people.
yeah, it's moving at yeah. Here's another one. Uh, it's ignore the gender stuff in this, but it's called a body of men. A body of men moving as a single entity in that sense, and all you can hear are okay, it's amplified, but 2 feet. Um, because if everybody's in step, it works. And it takes a whole load of thinking out of the process because you just go with the rhythm of it.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm endlessly fascinated looking in this direction. Um, and like you, I can't imagine retiring or stopping looking in this direction because there is so much more to see.
There is, yeah. There,
Um,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because we all, I talk to people and they go, "Yeah, I know what the principles are." I was like, "Really? I don't know what they are." Isn't that interesting? Because people just put lids on what they think, right?
mm,
Instead of seeing that whatever you think it is now, when you have done this 40 years, you'll see it very differently. And, having had those 40 years of experience, I'm telling you that there's no depth, there's no end to the depth of it.
mm,
And that is, I think, what makes it so fascinating. Like you said, it's
yeah,
like you think you've got it, you think you see it, and then boom, you change, and then you see it differently. It's like, oh, whoops, I guess not. There's
yeah,
more here.
yeah.
And
It,
so you don't come to the end of it. You sure don't get bored, that's for sure.
yeah. No, I can imagine that. Um, the Yeah, it's just a bit of a wild adventure, and it having an idea of what the direction you think you're going in is probably not not that helpful. It's like, well, I can remember sitting in London with when I was learning from Aaron and Leader and their faculty at One Thought, and all I could see was, I've got a map of the world that I've drawn today, but I've come to the edge of it. And I go to sleep and I wake up and I've got a completely blank one again. I can pick up yesterday's map if I want, but actually I've got a blank piece of paper again. Let's go
Mhm.
and let's go and explore that. And I remember when I was serving in Sierra Leone, some of the mapping we had was massively out of date. The town maps were made in the 1950s. Um, there was in theory, one reasonable map of the whole country, but it was a really large scale created for flying rather than driving. But
Mm.
there was a slice through the centre that was white. They hadn't they hadn't actually bothered with that bit, and we were having to drive through it. Now we could clearly see that the land didn't stop, and the roads were obviously going somewhere, and we knew the towns on the other side of it. But we were going along and plotting ourselves the maps and coming back and drawing it. It just felt just like that in a sense of right. Well, we're going to get the best version we can at the moment.
Yeah,
That's probably we're going to come in and rub bits of that out and change it, and that's what I see here is I've got a perpetual blank canvas to play with. And yes, I've got some of my own understanding of what how that hangs together, but that's just a model I've created for today. And that's, that's fun. That's
yeah,
proper exploration.
yeah, yeah. It's to me. There's an I I've told this story a couple times, but there's the Polynesians, right, were great sailors, and they came from Papua New Guinea area, and they came to the east on these canoes. And you have to remember that in those times there were no maps,
Hmm.
right? They had no globes, but they taught navigation with a ball when the Europeans were looking at the world as being flat. So they had some insight into it being a ball, right? But like I live on an island, right? And you go down to the shore and you look out and you can see nothing. Now, that doesn't freak me out because I know that eventually there's a couple of other continents out there. If I keep going, I would hit the
Hmm.
continent, right? But if you don't know that, I mean, it's just like it hit me like, wow, well, how did they get in their canoe and start paddling and know where they were going?
And hope. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and hope. So the navigator from the Hokulea was talking at the Museum for Indigenous People in Washington, D.C., and Judy happened to be there, and he was talking, and somebody asked him that question, and they said, like, how do they know where to go to find the islands? And he said that they would stay where they were at until they could see in their mind's eye where they were going to go. And then they would get in the canoe and paddle, and the island would come to them.
Hmm.
And I thought, wow, that's really how you walk into the unknown, right? Because you don't know. And what a great way to explain that because you really don't know what's going to come to you. But if you know inside that and the direction you're going, that somehow it'll all fall into place, you don't need faith. You don't need faith then because you know at a deeper level that you'll get to where you're supposed to go. But I,
Hmm.
I just love that as an analogy for life because we just think we know. After a while, you think you're going to go to work every day. You think you're going to go to the grocery store. You think you know this, but you never know when life's going to change suddenly,
Hmm.
and it's not what you're going to do. And it's knowing that inside of us, no matter what happens, if we go to that space, we will get direction. We will get what we need. We'll get the answers we need, and we'll be able to see where to go. That's one of the reasons I moved to Hawaii is because the Hawaiian culture had so much that was exactly in line with the principles. And I thought, wow, this would be a better place to move than New York City, for instance.
Hmm.
And because they really could appreciate the fact that we have innate health within us. Yeah, so but that story always just kind of every time I hear it, I'm taken back from it because there's a kind of listening and trust that we have once you understand that it's within you. It's just that nobody teaches us that.
Yeah.
We're taught to figure everything out and think about it, which means we're left with what we already know. That's all we can use. You can't get new thought in that way. When that new thought pops in your head, it's like, oh, yeah, that's a good one. And you know it didn't come from you. You know it came through you. So to me, that's the other thing that I find I get a lot of jazz out of is sitting and talking with people, and something comes through me that I never heard before. Something comes through me that really touches the person, and I can feel it, they can feel it, and I know it has nothing to do with me. But the fact that I can do this work and then I get something from it, that to me that's pretty darn good because
Mm.
I can, doing, somebody said, how can you do your work when you're, taking care of your husband, you've got all this stuff on your plate? I was like, oh, it's the most fun thing in the world because I'm just totally in the moment with the person and my life doesn't exist until I come back to it. And if I just clear my mind for that time, then I'd have another look at my life. I get to see what I could change in my life, what I could do different.
Mm. Yeah.
I'll give an example of that. My husband's, he's been in and out of the hospital for the last year and a half and with different ailments. And he's almost died 4 times. And I've been really taking care of him, taking care of my work, doing everything. And I got really tired. And when I could feel my mood was low. I could feel that I wasn't thinking right, wasn't able to remember everything because I had so many details on my mind. And because I knew that, I could then like clear my mind and come back to it. But my common sense told me, Chris, you cannot keep doing this. You need to get some help. And so I just started thinking about it. Like I just need to get some help. And this woman came forth that's a good friend of mine that also takes care of my 5-month-old puppy and comes out and helps me twice a week. And the other day I was driving down the road and I was like, oh yeah, there's my feeling again. It's like I had just like I was not unhappy. I was not stressed. I was just tired. And then all of a sudden I shifted back into that feeling. I was like, yeah, okay, now I'm good. Because I was just happy for no reason. I was just in this beautiful feeling. And it's understanding the principles just helps us to get through whatever we got to go through. And so that's another thing that's really, I'm learning so much about myself and about maintaining my grounding no matter what.
Yeah.
That, all kinds of ways to freak myself out, like, oh my God. And then, oh, not dying now, Chris, knock it off. And coming back to really getting quiet and trusting that if I just got quiet, everything would shift again. And it did.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. I'm
Christian,
really super grateful.
yeah. Thank you so much for coming to join me today. Um, you mentioned before we started that you're running a program in August, I think it was. Do you mind telling us
Oh,
about it?
yeah. Yes. Thank you for reminding me about that. And it kind of reminded me when you were talking about uh, walking in step with each other and coming together. And that feeling is that the Three Principles Global Community, which is a nonprofit organization designed to promote the work of Sydney Banks in the world and keep it as pure as possible, is putting on a conference with those of us that are left of Sid's most of Sid's original students, not all of them, but most of them. And we thought what we'd like to do is bring people together to try to create the feeling that we got when we would hear Sid talk and to really have a conference not really a conference. We debated what to call it, a gathering, what it is, because it's not really a conference, but an opportunity to come together to sit in that very deep, beautiful feeling for a weekend. And there's just something about that that is super powerful in helping people to wake up at a deeper level. So what we've done is we have created this weekend, which is totally designed to talk about the magic and the mystery that this work brings into all of our lives, and to sit with that together. And I tell you, there's nothing more powerful than that, is to be quiet and slow down and really go into that space within with each other.
Mm.
And that's the paradox of this. It's like you're going within yourself, but you're also connecting by doing that with other people, so that together we can go as deep as possible, so that we can perpetuate this work after we're gone. Because most of us are getting pretty up there in age. And so we thought we'd try to do this one last gift to the community, to really share as much as we could of that feeling, not of our own experience or, the stories we tell about how we came into this work, but really just to create that beautiful feeling and to sit with it. So we're inviting people that lived on Salt Spring Island when Sid had his experience, lived in the islands anyway, and they will be there to kind of talk story with people in between talks. And it's really kind of designed to be really super chill and allow for that reflection and deepening of spirit. So if you're able to, and I know that travel costs are high and all that, but I'm telling you, I think it'll be a once in a lifetime experience. It'll be really a great thing if you can come. So any of you listening, if you can join us, we'd love to have you.
Cool. I will find the details and share them in the show notes so that people can find them.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dave. I really appreciate you asking me to talk, and for sharing that information with people. And
You're very
I
welcome.
heard of your podcast. I listened to a couple episodes, and I think the work you do is super great. And I thank you for carrying the torch too, as well.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with me today, from the other side of the world.
Yes. And thanks for staying up late so we could do this. I
You're
appreciate
very
it.
welcome. You're very welcome. Take care.
Aloha.
Thank you for joining us today. If you've enjoyed the conversation, feel free to subscribe and join me and my new guests next time. If you're interested in the work I'm doing, or you think I can be of service to you or your organisation, please email dave@simplicityofmind.co.uk. Remember, see if you can find time to slow down and reflect. Those simple ideas might be worth listening to. Take care, and I hope you can join me in a couple of weeks.